Today the Church celebrates the solemnity of Saint Joseph, husband of the Blessed Virgin Mary. In the early years of Christianity, Jesus was recognized as the Son of God born of the Virgin Mary. In fact, Matthew in his Gospel states, Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Of her was born Jesus, who is called the Christ. Matthew chapter 1, verse 16. Little is known about Saint Joseph, and the Gospels of Matthew and Luke mention him only in the context of the infancy narratives. He is spoken to by the angel or by God in dreams, but we never hear Joseph speak. He is the silent one. Even when the young Jesus stayed behind in the temple and his parents returned searching for him, it was Mary who spoke. "Son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been looking for you with great anxiety." Luke chapter 2, verse 48. The emphasis on Mary and her role in salvation history was surely a conscious effort to show that Jesus was born through divine intervention, and he was human yet divine. In the bargain, Joseph was relegated to the sidelines. Mary was held in high esteem in the early church. It looks like Joseph was in the picture merely to show that Jesus belonged to the family of King David. Devotion to Saint Joseph in the East can be traced to the 4th century. In the West, the Servites, a mendicant order, seemed to have popularized devotion to Saint Joseph in the 14th century. In 1481, Pope Sixtus VI established the Feast of Saint Joseph, and in 1847, Pope Pius IX added Saint Joseph to the Litany of the Saints. In 1870, Pope Pius IX declared Saint Joseph as the patron of the Universal Church. This is a recognition of the role that Saint Joseph played in the formation and growth of Jesus in Nazareth. Devotion to Saint Joseph was present in the Society of Jesus from its earliest years. And when Saint Joseph was declared as patron of the Universal Church, he also became patron of the Society of Jesus. But with Pope Pius XII establishing the Feast of Saint Joseph the Worker in 1955, the Feast of the Patronage of Saint Joseph was removed from the Jesuit liturgical calendar. It was only in 2012 that the Society of Jesus re-established the liturgical celebration of the patronage of Saint Joseph. It is interesting to note that the Jesuit liturgical calendar has 3 solemnities and 3 feasts. The solemnities include the titular feast of the Society on 3rd January, the patronage of Saint Joseph on 19th March, and the solemnity of Saint Ignatius on 31st July. The 3 feasts include Mary, Mother of the Society, on 22nd April, the Feast of All Saints of the Society on 5th November, and the Feast of Saint Francis Xavier on 3rd December. Though Saint Joseph played a silent role in the life of Jesus, he played a very important role. The fact that he was chosen as head of the Holy Family shows he had God's favor. He is spoken of as being righteous and just. As a good Jew, he followed the law, but was compassionate in his application of it. And that is why, when he learned that Mary was with child, he sought to send her away without making a spectacle of the situation. Being a man of prayer, he was attentive to God's voice in his heart, and trusting in God, he changed his mind and took Mary into his home. Joseph lived by faith and sought to take the best possible decision in every situation in his life. He was a man of discernment. In the Gospels, we read of the many parables of Jesus, and in many of them we have fathers. Jesus also referred to God as his Father, Abba. This shows that Jesus had a good grasp of what a father does, and credit goes to Saint Joseph, who mediated God's fatherhood to Jesus. Joseph also mediated God as divine teacher to Jesus. Joseph played a crucial role in Jesus' increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. This is not to reduce the role of Mary in the life of Jesus. Joseph and Mary formed Jesus in Nazareth. But in a patriarchal society, it is natural that the head of the family would have a greater role. In the Gospel of Matthew, it is Joseph who gives Jesus his name. By naming, he adopts Jesus as his own son. The name Jesus is from the Hebrew name Yeshua or Joshua, which means God saves. In the Old Testament, it was Moses who liberated the Israelites from slavery, but it was Joshua who led the sons of Israel into the promised land. Matthew portrays Jesus as the new Moses, the new lawgiver, and like his namesake, Jesus is the one who leads all people back to the promised land, to our eternal home, to God. Saint Joseph is upheld as an example of good discipleship. He trusted God. He was courageous yet humble. He was strong but gentle. He was a guardian and protector. He is a shining example of holiness. His protection and intercession is invoked by many, and Saint Joseph never fails to draw people close to his son Jesus. Saint Joseph is invoked as a patron saint for a happy death. There are quite a few apps dedicated to devotion to Saint Joseph in the Google Play Store, but I could not find any that are ad-free except one which is dated. Most of the apps contain prayers to Saint Joseph like the Memorare and the Litany of Saint Joseph. So if you go to the Google Play Store and if you type Saint Joseph in the search box, you will get a list of apps that contain the words Saint Joseph. And I went through a couple of these apps and saw that most of them contain ads. Of course, some of the apps are not related to devotion to Saint Joseph, but among the apps that are listed, I found this particular app as being ad-free. The only problem is this particular app is dated. It's quite old. It's not been updated in the recent times. Nevertheless, if you go and install it, Saint Joseph's Prayers, it is basically a list of prayers and devotions to Saint Joseph. The popular prayers are the Memorare to Saint Joseph and the Litany of Saint Joseph. Apart from that, you have got prayer to Saint Joseph for a difficult problem, a workman's prayer to Saint Joseph, prayer to Saint Joseph for the unemployed, or pray to Saint Joseph in time of distress, and so on. So if you click on any of these prayers, you get the prayer which you can pray silently, meditate, and I'm sure these prayers would help anyone who wants to foster or cultivate a devotion to Saint Joseph. Joseph is a powerful intercessor, a patron of many institutions. He's a patron of many countries. He's a patron saint of many people. Many people bear the name of Joseph. And therefore, if one wants to cultivate devotion to Saint Joseph and one has a smartphone, I suppose this app would make things easier to have a prayer handy when you need one.